My name is Paige Collins. I'm 28 years old, and for most of my life, my family spoke about me the way people talk about background noise. Something always there, never important enough to acknowledge. I grew up in Tucson, Arizona, in a house where love wasn't evenly distributed. It flowed freely toward my older brother, Owen Collins, like sunlight through an open window. And I stood just outside it, close enough to feel the warmth, never close enough to be seen. Owen was the golden child, brilliant, charismatic, a successful attorney before 30. My parents spoke his name with pride, like it tasted good in their mouths. "Your brother is going places," my mother, Carol Collins, would say. "Smart kid," my father, Robert Collins, would add, nodding as if Owen were a personal achievement. And me? I was the reliable one, the quiet one, the one who filled the gaps without being asked. If Owen failed, it was potential. If I succeeded, it was expected. That pattern started early and never broke. When Owen struggled through college, my parents paid for tutors and celebrated every small win. When I graduated near the top of my class and built a freelance marketing career from scratch, my mother hugged me distractedly and asked if I'd seen Owen's latest courtroom photo on LinkedIn. I learned not to complain, not to ask, not to hope too loudly. Years before the wedding, before everything finally collapsed, I was on the brink of my own independence. I'd landed a $45,000 contract with a regional retail chain to revamp their Southwest marketing campaign. It was the biggest deal of my life. My name would finally stand alone, untethered from my family. Then the phone rang. It was my mother, crying. The family hardware store, my parents' pride and livelihood, was failing. Bills stacked up. Suppliers stopped answering calls. Bankruptcy hovered like a threat they were too afraid to say out loud. "I don't know what to do, Paige," Mom sobbed. Dad got on the line after her. His voice was low, ashamed. "We might lose everything." I didn't hesitate. I walked away from the contract. I canceled the deal, apologized to the client, and redirected every ounce of my energy into saving that store. I told myself family mattered more, that someday they'd remember this. I built a full marketing campaign from nothing. Radio ads, local flyers, early social media promotions. I negotiated with vendors, cut costs, restructured inventory, and worked until my eyes burned. Within months, foot traffic doubled. Revenue climbed. The store survived. I waited for gratitude. Instead, my parents called a family meeting. I still remember standing in the store aisle while Mom smiled proudly and said, "We've decided Owen should take over management." I felt my chest tighten. "He's an attorney," she continued. "He has the mind for this." Owen stood there, adjusting his tie, smiling like he'd earned it. "You did okay, Paige," he said. "Okay." I swallowed everything and stayed. I kept working, nights, weekends. I reorganized shelves, updated displays, refined the campaign. I told myself recognition would come eventually. It never did. That's when Tyler Hayes, my best friend since college, started calling it what it was. "They're using you," he said one night over diner coffee. I laughed it off, but the words stuck. Still, I stayed. Because hope is stubborn. When Owen announced his engagement to Amanda Foster, my parents didn't ask if I could help with the wedding. They assumed I would. I was handed responsibility for everything: vendors, logistics, budget, without discussion. I dipped into my savings, $12,000, nearly everything I had. Not for Owen, for proof. I wanted them to finally see me. Instead, they demanded more. More money, more perfection, more sacrifice. And the closer the wedding came, the clearer it became. I wasn't family to them. I was infrastructure, and I was about to be removed. By the time Owen's wedding planning officially began, I already knew my role. I wasn't a sister. I wasn't family. I was labor. My parents didn't sit me down to ask if I had the time, the money, or the emotional bandwidth to take this on. They simply assumed I would. Carol handed me a thick folder across the kitchen counter one afternoon, The way you pass off an errand. Here, she said. Vendors, venue options. You're good at this kind of thing. Good at this kind of thing. What she meant was, you'll do it quietly. You won't complain. And you won't ask for credit. At that point, I was scraping by on freelance marketing work. Small clients, tight margins, nothing glamorous, but it was mine. Still, I opened my savings account and told myself it was temporary. Just deposits. I'd get it back later. I wouldn't. I paid for the venue first, then the caterer, then the florist, then the band. Every payment felt like a test. $12,000. Nearly every dollar I had. Owen didn't thank me once. Instead, his demands escalated. He called me constantly, usually while I was juggling client calls or revising ad copy late at night. We need better flowers, he said one morning, scrolling through photos on his phone while I sat across from him at the kitchen table. Amanda saw imported orchids in a magazine, real luxury stuff. I explained the budget, calmly, carefully, like I always did. We can do roses, local supplier, they're beautiful, and he rolled his eyes. You always cut corners, Paige. That phrase hit harder than he realized. Carol chimed in without looking up from her coffee. It's his wedding. Don't embarrass us. Dad, as usual, said nothing, just nodded. I adjusted. I always adjusted. I negotiated, haggled, found alternatives that looked expensive without actually being expensive. I stayed up past midnight, emailing vendors, reworking menus, recalculating numbers that no longer added up. Grilled salmon instead of steak. A local jazz trio instead of a Phoenix quartet. Standard roses instead of imported orchids. Every compromise felt like a tightrope, but Owen didn't see compromise. He saw entitlement. A week later, he called again. We need a better photographer, he said. There's a guy from LA who shot the governor's daughter's wedding. I laughed before I could stop myself. Owen, he charges $4,000 a day. So, he snapped, figure it out. I reminded him, gently, that I was already paying for half the wedding, that my savings were gone. He hung up on me. That night, Carol cornered me in the kitchen. Why are you being difficult? She asked. This is Owen's once-in-a-lifetime day. I stared at her, exhausted. I've already paid $12,000, Mom. She waved it off. Money comes and goes. Apparently, only when it was mine. Amanda, his fiancée, hovered at the edges of everything. Quiet, observant. She never defended me, never objected. She smiled politely and let Owen speak for both of them. Sometimes I caught her watching me, calculating, as if she already understood the family she was marrying into and had decided silence was safer. By then, my resentment was simmering, but hope hadn't died yet. I kept telling myself the same lie I always did. After the wedding, they'll see what I did. The night before the ceremony, we gathered around the dining table. Carol had cooked pot roast. No one touched it. The air felt wrong, heavy. Owen leaned back in his chair, phone in hand. Amanda picked at her plate. Dad sipped wine and stared into nothing. Then Owen spoke. We need to upgrade the menu. I looked up. Add lobster and that vintage Napa champagne. Oh, and book the LA photographer. I froze. Lobster. $600 champagne. A celebrity photographer. I set my fork down slowly. I can't, I said. There's no money left. Owen scoffed. You're always so cheap. Carol slammed her glass down. Why are you being selfish? That word snapped something in me. I've already spent $12,000 of my own money, I said, my voice shaking despite my effort to control it. I've done everything you asked. Owen leaned toward Amanda. See, I told you she'd skimp. Carol crossed her arms. You've always been like this, Paige. Never stepping up when it matters. Dad finally spoke. Don't ruin this for your brother. Ruin this. I felt the room tilt. Something inside me cracked open. Not loudly, not dramatically, but cleanly. Like a bone breaking under pressure. I can't keep pouring money I don't have into this, I said. I won't. Owen smirked. Then maybe you shouldn't be involved at all. Carol leaned forward, her eyes cold. You know what? The greatest gift for your brother's wedding is you vanishing from this family forever. Silence swallowed the room. Dad didn't object. Amanda didn't speak. Owen smiled. I stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the floor. Fine, I said, if that's what you want. I grabbed my purse. My keys shook in my hand. Don't make a scene, Carol called after me. I didn't look back. When the door slammed behind me, it sounded final. And for the first time in my life, I realized something terrifying and liberating at once. They didn't need me. They used me. And I was done offering myself up for free. I barely slept that night. Carol's words replayed in my head on a loop, sharp and unmistakable. The greatest gift is you vanishing from this family forever. By sunrise, something inside me had gone quiet. Not numb, clear. I sat on the edge of my bed with my phone in my hands, staring at my bank app. The numbers glowed back at me like a confession. $12,000. Every deposit, every check. Every favor I'd quietly funded so Owen could have his perfect day. I thought about the way Carol had said selfish, about Owen's smirk, about Dad's silence. And for the first time, I asked myself a question I'd avoided for years. Why am I still paying to be erased? I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't call Tyler. I opened my contacts and started dialing. The caterer answered first. I explained calmly that I was canceling my portion of the order. There were penalties, she warned. I told her I understood and asked about the refund. Next was the florist. No centerpieces, I said. No arrangements. Cancel everything tied to my card. Then the band. They hesitated. I pushed. I reminded them who'd signed the contract. By noon, most of my money was coming back. Each call felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. By early afternoon, the wedding venue descended into chaos. Guests arrived to bare tables. No music, no flowers, no food. Amanda stood in her dress, pale and stunned. Owen yelled at the staff. Carol screamed into her phone. My voicemail filled rapidly. What did you do? You've ruined everything. You're a disgrace. I didn't answer. Instead, I watched Owen's social media explode. He posted that I'd sabotaged his wedding out of jealousy, that I was unstable, vindictive, cruel. Carol commented underneath, "She's always been trouble." The narrative spread fast. Neighbors, distant relatives, people who'd never asked my side. I closed the app. That night, I searched for apartments in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I left Tucson 3 weeks later. I sold my small freelance business for $28,000. Pulled out the $6,000 I'd invested in the hardware store. Didn't mourn my parents. They told me to vanish, so I did. Santa Fe was quiet, warm, honest. I rented a small adobe apartment and slept on the floor the first night, eating takeout and breathing freely for the first time in years. The hardware store collapsed within weeks. Suppliers stopped delivering, shelves emptied, customers disappeared. Owen panicked. Carol blamed everyone but herself. Dad withdrew completely. Tyler texted me updates. "They're unraveling," he wrote. I didn't reply. In Santa Fe, I started over. I took small clients, local galleries, coffee shops, boutiques. That's where I met Rosa Martinez. She owned a cafe near the plaza. Loud laugh, kind eyes, no patience for nonsense. "You look like someone who ran away," she said the first time we talked. I smiled. I did. She didn't pry. She introduced me to other business owners, gave me space, gave me belief. My income stabilized. My life softened. Months passed. Then a letter arrived from Carol. She claimed she was sick, that she needed me, that the family needed to rebuild. I showed Rosa. She read it once and set it down. "This is manipulation," she said flatly. Tyler agreed. So I wrote one line back. "I wish you well. I'm not coming back." And that was it. A year later, I landed a major contract with the New Mexico Tourism Board. My income tripled. My apartment filled with plants and books and light. One evening at Rosa's cafe, a client hugged me, thanking me for saving his business. I smiled. For the first time, I understood something clearly. I wasn't invisible. I had just been standing in the wrong room. Santa Fe didn't welcome me with fireworks or dramatic turning points. It welcomed me with quiet. Mornings where the light crept through adobe walls slowly, like it was asking permission. Afternoons scented with coffee and dust and roasted green chili. Evenings that didn't demand anything from me except rest. For the first time in my life, no one was watching to see what I could provide. That alone felt unreal. I built my days carefully, intentionally. I worked from my small kitchen table at first, laptop balanced between mugs and notebooks. Freelance projects trickled in. Branding for a pottery studio, social media campaigns for a bookstore, menu redesigns for 2 local restaurants. The pay wasn't spectacular, but it was steady. More importantly, it was mine. Rosa Martinez became the anchor I didn't know I needed. Her cafe sat near the plaza, warm and always loud. She had a way of filling a room just by existing in it, not through dominance, but certainty. She knew who she was. She didn't apologize for it. She never asked why I left Tucson. She never asked about my parents. She just treated me like someone worth knowing. "You don't owe your past an explanation," she told me one morning while refilling my coffee. "You owe your future some peace." Those words settled deep. I started attending local business meetups with her, standing awkwardly at first, then speaking more confidently as people asked about my work. Marketing, it turned out, was a language Santa Fe desperately needed. Artists knew how to create beauty. They didn't know how to sell it. I did. By my 3rd month, I had 6 clients. By the 6th, 8. My income leveled out around $4,200 a month. Enough to breathe. Enough to plan. I hiked on weekends, joined a local group that explored desert trails just outside the city. The land felt honest, wide, unforgiving, beautiful without asking permission. At night, I painted again. Watercolors, landscapes. Nothing ambitious, just expression. And slowly, without realizing it, I stopped bracing myself. That's when the ripples from Tucson reached me again. Tyler called one afternoon, his voice unusually serious. "They lost the house," he said. I closed my eyes. Carol and Robert had sold it quietly, moving into a small apartment on the outskirts of town. The neighbors who used to wave now looked away. The hardware store's shuttered windows had become a symbol of pride misplaced, of arrogance without foundation. Owen didn't fare better. The golden child glow wore off quickly when there was no one left to prop him up. His attempts to blame me stopped working once the evidence became obvious. Employees quit, suppliers cut ties. Even his engagement to Amanda dissolved under the strain. "She left," Tyler said. "Didn't even make a scene." I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt distance. Their collapse wasn't my victory. It was simply the result of gravity finally doing its job. Then the letter arrived. Carol's handwriting was shaky, dramatic, familiar. She wrote about illness, about regret, about how families should stick together. She painted herself fragile, desperate, humbled. She didn't apologize. She asked me to come home. I held the envelope in my hands for a long time before showing Rosa. She read it once, then again, then set it down gently. "This isn't accountability," she said. "It's bait." Her certainty snapped something into place. I called Tyler that night. "She hasn't changed," he said. "She's just running out of options." That hurt more than I expected. Not because I disagreed, but because I finally accepted it. I wrote back with a single paragraph. Polite, final. "I wish you well. I won't be returning. Please don't contact me again." I blocked their numbers afterward. The silence that followed was different from before. It wasn't empty. It was peaceful. Months passed. My business grew. I upgraded to a small office near the plaza, painted the walls white, bought a real desk, hung one of my own watercolors by the window. Then came the email that changed everything. The New Mexico Tourism Board wanted to meet. A year-long campaign, full regional branding, a budget that made my hands shake when I read it. I landed the contract. My income tripled overnight. The night I signed, Rosa closed the cafe early. She poured wine. She hugged me hard. "You did this," she said. "Not them. You." That night, sitting in my apartment surrounded by plants and half-finished paintings, I realized something quietly revolutionary. I hadn't just escaped my family, I had outgrown them. Their voices, critical, dismissive, demanding, no longer lived in my head. I didn't measure my worth by their approval. I didn't wonder what Owen would think. I had clients who trusted me, friends who showed up, a life that fit. One evening, a gallery owner stopped by Rosa's cafe while I was there, thanking me for a campaign that doubled his visitors. Carol would have taken credit. Owen would have demanded praise. Dad would have nodded silently. Rosa just smiled at me over the counter, and I smiled back. Santa Fe wasn't a hiding place. It was the place I learned how to stand without shrinking. The last thing I heard about the Collins family came to me indirectly, not through a call, not through an apology, but through silence. In Tucson, the old hardware store still stood, but barely. Its windows were dusty now, the faded logo peeling from the glass like a memory that refused to stay intact. Locals walked past without slowing. No one stopped to look. It had once been the center of my parents' world, the place they'd defended, praised, and handed over to Owen as if success were hereditary. Without me, it didn't last. Tyler told me that Owen tried to revive it at first. He reorganized inventory without understanding suppliers. He cut corners in places that mattered and obsessed over optics instead of substance. He blamed staff, he blamed vendors, he blamed me. He never blamed himself. Eventually, there was nothing left to manage. The doors closed quietly, no grand announcement, no public reckoning, just a notice taped to the inside of the glass. Bankruptcy. Carol spiraled after that. Without the store, without the house, without Owen's illusion of competence, she lost her footing. The confidence she'd worn like armor cracked. Friends stopped calling. Relatives avoided the topic altogether. Robert retreated into himself completely. He'd always been good at that. Owen bounced between short-term jobs. His resume impressive, but his reputation damaged. People talked. They remembered the wedding post, the accusations, the drama. And slowly the truth settled in around them like dust. They had built everything on my back, and when I stepped away, there was nothing underneath. In Santa Fe, my life moved forward without effort. The tourism board contract expanded. I hired a part-time assistant. I took on larger clients, regional campaigns, multi-location businesses, projects that challenged me in the best way. I bought new hiking boots, took weekend trips, learned how to say no without guilt. I painted more. Bigger canvases, bolder colors. My apartment filled with life. Succulents on the windowsill, a Navajo rug I saved up for, books I actually had time to read. Tyler visited once. We sat on my balcony overlooking the desert as the sun dipped low. "They still talk about you," he said carefully, "like you're the missing piece." I laughed softly. They had me. They just didn't value me. That night, after he left, I realized something that surprised me. I didn't miss them. I missed the idea of who I'd wanted them to be. Months later, another letter arrived. This one wasn't from Carol. It was from Owen. Short, bitter, accusatory. "You destroyed everything. You always had to make it about you." I read it once, then I deleted it. No response, no explanation. No defense. Closure doesn't always come with apologies. Sometimes it comes with indifference. One evening, Rosa closed the cafe early again. We sat at the counter with coffee and pastries we hadn't sold. "You ever regret leaving?" she asked casually. I thought about it, about the way my chest used to tighten every time I walked into my parents' house, about how I measured my worth by what I could fix, about how love always felt conditional. "No," I said. "I regret staying as long as I did." She nodded, satisfied. That night, as I walked home through the quiet streets of Santa Fe, the air cool and forgiving, I understood something fully for the first time. I wasn't the shadow child because I lacked light. I was a shadow because they stood in front of me. And when I stepped out from behind them, I didn't disappear. I became visible, not to them, to myself. Santa Fe wasn't where I ran away. It was where I finally arrived.